In the heart of the city stood a hospital known for its brilliance, its technology, and its world-class doctors. It was the place where millionaires, politicians, and celebrities came when their lives were on the line. But on one stormy night, that hospital faced a challenge unlike any other. A billionaire, one of the most powerful men in the country, was rushed through its gates, unconscious, his life slipping away. His name was Richard Hamilton. He owned skyscrapers, airlines, and entire industries. He was used to buying solutions to every problem, but this night, money could not buy him life. Inside his private room, 15 of the world's best doctors gathered. They had been summoned from across the nation. Cardiologists, neurologists, surgeons, each one an expert. Their mission was clear: save the billionaire at any cost. It had begun earlier that evening. Richard had been giving a grand speech at a charity gala, speaking about his achievements and promising new investments. The audience hung on every word, but then his voice faltered, his hand trembled, his face turned pale, and before anyone could react, he collapsed on the stage. Panic swept through the hall. Security rushed forward, medics tried CPR, and within minutes, Richard was loaded into his private jet and flown to the city's greatest hospital. The world's media gathered outside, hungry for answers. Would the billionaire survive? Inside the hospital, the 15 doctors worked tirelessly. Machines beeped, charts were studied, scans were taken. They tried treatment after treatment, first for a heart attack, then for a stroke, then for infection. Hours passed, yet his condition only worsened. One doctor shouted, "We've tried everything." Another snapped back, "There has to be something we're missing." But no matter what they did, the billionaire's pulse weakened. His skin turned gray. His breathing slowed. It seemed as though death itself had entered the room. For all their brilliance, for all their years of training, 15 doctors could not save him. Down in the quiet hallways of the hospital, a janitor named James Walker pushed his mop across the floor. He was invisible to most, just another worker in the shadows. But that night, his teenage son Elijah had come with him. Elijah wasn't like other boys his age. He was quiet, observant, and endlessly curious. While other kids played games, he filled notebooks with drawings of machines, medical sketches, and strange equations. His teachers often said he had a mind far beyond his years. As James mopped near the operating theater, Elijah overheard 2 nurses whispering, 15 doctors and nothing is working." Another snapped back, "There has to be something we're missing." But Elijah's eyes narrowed. To him, this wasn't just tragedy. It was a puzzle, and puzzles had solutions.
Elijah sneaked into the observation gallery above the operating room. From behind the glass, he watched as the doctors argued. He studied the billionaire's body carefully, his bluish nails, the twitch in his eyes, the way his body reacted to drugs. Suddenly, something clicked in Elijah's mind. He grabbed his notebook and scribbled furiously. "It's not a stroke, not a heart attack. It's the medicine. The medicine is poisoning him." He raced back to his father. "Dad, I know what's wrong with him. They're treating him for the wrong thing. His body is rejecting the drugs." James looked at his son in disbelief. "Elijah, you're just a boy. These are the best doctors in the country." But Elijah's voice shook with urgency. "Please, Dad, if they keep giving him that treatment, he'll die." James hesitated, then made the boldest decision of his life. He grabbed Elijah by the hand and marched into the billionaire's room. The doctors turned, shocked and annoyed. "This is no place for janitors," one of them snapped. But Elijah stepped forward, his voice firm. "You're treating him for the wrong thing. He's not having a stroke. His liver is failing from drug toxicity. Test his enzymes. You'll see I'm right." The room fell silent. Some doctors laughed, others scowled. "You think a child knows better than 15 doctors?" But one younger doctor, curious, decided to humor the boy. He ordered the test. Minutes later, the results came in. The boy was right. In disbelief, the doctors quickly flushed the billionaire's system, stopped the harmful medication, and administered the antidote Elijah suggested. Slowly, the monitors began to stabilize. The erratic heartbeat grew steady. His breathing strengthened. One by one, the doctors turned to Elijah, their eyes wide with shock. The janitor's son had seen what nobody else could. Hours later, as dawn broke, Richard Hamilton opened his eyes. The first face he saw wasn't a doctor, but a boy standing nervously by the door. With a weak smile, the billionaire whispered, Who saved me?" A doctor replied softly, "Not us, sir. It was him, the janitor's son." Days later, Richard summoned James and Elijah to his private room. His voice was stronger now, filled with gratitude. "You didn't just save my life," Richard said, looking directly at Elijah. "You saved my future. From this day on, I will make sure your gift is never wasted." He offered Elijah a full scholarship, mentorship, and access to the best education money could buy. News spread across the nation. Janitor's son outsmarts 15 doctors to save the billionaire. Elijah became a symbol of hidden genius, proof that brilliance can rise from the most unexpected places. And so, in a single night, the world learned a powerful lesson. That wealth cannot buy life, that expertise can sometimes fail, and that true genius knows no boundaries. 15 doctors could not save the billionaire, but the janitor's son, armed with courage, knowledge, and vision, saw what nobody else could and changed everything. Because sometimes the brightest light shines from the humblest place.
The room was still trembling with silence. Machines that had screamed with urgency just minutes ago now displayed a steady rhythm, the heartbeat of a man who was considered untouchable. The billionaire, whose life had seemed to slip away despite the best efforts of 15 elite doctors, had been brought back, not by them, but by the sharp eyes and brilliant mind of a janitor's son. Gasps filled the room. Doctors exchanged glances, some embarrassed, some humbled, others simply unable to process what had just happened. For years they had studied in the finest universities, practiced in the most advanced hospitals, and written papers that filled medical journals. And yet it was a teenage boy, in worn shoes and holding a simple notebook, who had solved the puzzle that none of them could. The billionaire's eyes fluttered open fully. His lips were dry, his voice faint, but his words carried the weight of power and gratitude. "Who saved me?" he whispered. The lead doctor hesitated, glancing at the team, then at the janitor's son. Slowly, he pointed. It was him. All eyes turned to the boy. His heart raced, his palms sweaty, but he stood tall, his gaze fixed on the billionaire. The billionaire's eyes softened fully. He motioned weakly with his hand, signaling the boy to come closer. Security guards instinctively stepped forward, but the billionaire raised a finger, silencing them. "Let him through," he ordered. The boy walked closer, his father just a step behind, holding his mop like a shield. When the boy reached the bedside, the billionaire studied him for a long moment. Despite his weakness, he smiled. "You saw what nobody else did. You saved my life." The boy swallowed hard. "I just noticed something. I couldn't stay quiet." The billionaire chuckled faintly, though it quickly turned into a cough. "You've done more than save me. You've proven that brilliance knows no titles, no wealth, no position." He turned his head toward the doctors. "And you all remember this night. Remember that wisdom can come from anywhere." The words landed heavy in the room. Some doctors bowed their heads, ashamed at how they had dismissed the boy earlier. The janitor, overwhelmed with emotion,
placed a hand on his son's shoulder. His eyes glistened with pride and relief. For years, he had told his boy that he was special, that his mind worked differently, that one day people would see what he saw. Tonight, that day had come. Hours passed. The billionaire was transferred to a private recovery suite. The boy and his father were invited to stay, something unheard of for a janitor's family. They sat quietly in the corner as doctors came and went, checking on their powerful patient. Finally, when the night grew still, the billionaire asked his staff to leave. Only the janitor and his son remained. "Tell me," he said softly, "what is your name?" The boy straightened his back. "Marcus, sir. Marcus Johnson." "Marcus," the billionaire repeated, letting the name linger in the air. "What do you want to become?" Marcus hesitated. For years, he had dreamed of becoming a doctor, but that dream always felt out of reach. His father's salary as a janitor barely kept the lights on. College was an impossible mountain. But tonight, something felt different. "I want to study medicine," Marcus said firmly. "I want to save lives." The billionaire smiled, a spark of admiration in his weary eyes. "Then you will." Marcus blinked. "Sir? You saved me when the most brilliant minds in this hospital couldn't. I owe you my life, Marcus. From this moment on, your education, your training, your future, it's my responsibility. I will sponsor you. You'll have the best schools, the best mentors, the best opportunities. Nothing will stop you." Tears filled Marcus's eyes. His father covered his mouth, unable to hold back his sobs. Years of struggle, years of cleaning hallways and being invisible, had suddenly transformed into a moment of unimaginable hope.
News of the billionaire's recovery and the unlikely hero behind it spread like wildfire. Headlines the next morning read, "Billionaire saved by janitor's son, a genius emerges." Doctors shocked as teens spots what they missed. Cameras gathered outside the hospital. Reporters begged for interviews. The billionaire's company released a statement confirming that Marcus Johnson would receive a full scholarship to any institution of his choice. For Marcus, life changed overnight. From being the quiet boy who helped his father mop hospital floors, he became a symbol of hope, a reminder that genius is not bound by privilege. But with recognition came challenges. Some people doubted him, claiming it was luck. Others envied him, whispering that he didn't belong in the world of elites. Yet Marcus stood firm, driven by the memory of the billionaire's words, "You saw what nobody else did." Weeks later, a formal ceremony was held in the billionaire's mansion. The grand hall sparkled with chandeliers, its walls lined with gold and art worth millions. The janitor and his son entered nervously, wearing new suits provided by the billionaire himself. For the first time in their lives, they were not invisible. They were honored guests. The billionaire stood before the crowd, healthier now, his voice strong. "Ladies and gentlemen, I stand here today because of a boy who noticed what 15 doctors did not. Marcus Johnson is proof that brilliance cannot be measured by wealth or position. He is proof that talent exists in every corner of society, if only we are willing to see it." The crowd erupted in applause. Marcus's cheeks flushed, but he lifted his head proudly. The billionaire walked to Marcus, placing a hand on his shoulder. "From this day forward, Marcus, you are family. Your journey begins here." Marcus nodded, overwhelmed but determined. He knew the road ahead would be long and demanding, but he was ready. Because he was no longer just a janitor's son. He was Marcus Johnson, the boy who saw what nobody else could.
The weeks after the billionaire's announcement felt like a dream. Marcus had lived his whole life in the shadows of hospital corridors, helping his father sweep and mop floors. Now, for the first time, he walked into places he had only imagined. Lecture halls of the most prestigious university, classrooms filled with the children of senators, CEOs, and wealthy dynasties. On his first day, Marcus stood outside the grand gates of Westbridge Medical University. The building rose like a castle, its stone walls and towering spires intimidating, yet magnificent. Students in polished clothes hurried past him, carrying laptops, tablets, and expensive books. Marcus clutched his worn backpack, the same one he had used for years, still patched in places where the fabric had torn. He whispered to himself, "I belong here. I earned this." But the whispers around him told another story. "Isn't that the janitor's kid?" "Yeah, the charity case, the billionaire's little project. He doesn't belong here with us." Marcos kept his eyes forward, his heart pounding. He had expected this. Privilege didn't welcome outsiders easily, but he wasn't here to fit in. He was here to learn, to grow, to prove, not to them, but to himself,
that his gift was real. Classes began. Professors spoke quickly, filling boards with complex equations and diagrams. Many students scribbled notes with ease. Marcus struggled at first to keep up. His background hadn't prepared him for this level of academic challenge. Nights stretched long as he sat in his small dorm room, revisiting textbooks, replaying lecture recordings, filling notebooks with questions. Some nights, exhaustion nearly defeated him. He would stare at his reflection in the crocked mirror, doubts gnawing at his mind. Maybe they were right. Maybe I don't belong here. Maybe saving the billionaire was just luck. But then he would remember his father's words, spoken countless times while pushing a mop down silent hospital halls. "Son, you have a gift. Never let anyone tell you otherwise." And he would remember the billionaire's voice, weak but powerful. "You saw what nobody else did." Those memories became his fuel. Months passed. Slowly, Marcus began to rise. He asked questions in class that made professors pause. He connected dots that others overlooked. While other students memorized facts, Marcus sought to understand the why behind every detail. His notebook, once filled with rough sketches and ideas, grew into a treasure of theories and solutions. One day, during a complex surgery simulation, a group of students froze when faced with an unexpected complication. Alarms rang in the simulated operating room. Everyone panicked, except Marcus. His eyes narrowed, recalling the billionaire's case, recalling how the doctors had missed what was right in front of them. He calmly adjusted the model, rerouted the process, and stabilized the patient. The room went silent. Then, the professor smiled. "Class, remember this moment. Marcus Johnson is not just a student. He is a visionary." For the first time, Marcus felt the weight of belonging. But not everyone celebrated his success. Some classmates, envious of the attention he received, whispered cruel words behind his back. One in particular, a wealthy student named Richard, son of a hospital director, despised Marcus. During a heated debate in class, Richard sneered, "You don't deserve to be here. You think one lucky guess makes you a genius? You're nothing without the billionaire's money." The words stung, but Marcus stood his ground. "Maybe I don't have your money. Maybe I don't have your family name. But I know this. When someone's life is slipping away, it won't be your money or your name that saves them. It will be knowledge. And I will never stop learning." The room erupted in applause. Richard turned red with fury. Years rolled by. Marcus grew stronger, sharper, more confident. He became a student leader, tutoring others, organizing study groups, and even volunteering in free clinics for poor families. Unlike many of his peers, who studied medicine only to secure high-paying careers, Marcus studied because he knew what it meant to be invisible, to be powerless. He treated every patient with respect, whether they were wealthy businessmen or janitors who cleaned the hospital halls. Professors began recommending his name to research boards. Medical journals started publishing his observations. By the time he neared graduation, Marcus Johnson was no longer just the janitor's son. He was a rising star in the medical world. On the day of his graduation, the auditorium overflowed with applause. Students tossed their caps into the air, families cheered, and cameras flashed. Marcus stood on stage, wearing his gown, his heart full. In the front row, his father wept openly, clutching his mop handle like a badge of honor. Beside him sat the billionaire, proud and smiling. When Marcus's name was called, the dean declared, "Graduating with highest honors, the future of medicine, Marcus Johnson." The crowd rose to their feet. Marcus stepped forward, receiving his diploma. And as he looked out over the sea of faces, he remembered the boy who once watched doctors from behind a glass window, too poor to dream, too invisible to matter. Now he was proof that dreams, no matter how small or fragile, could rise higher than anyone ever imagined.
Years passed like chapters in a book. Marcus Johnson was no longer just the boy who once saved a billionaire. He was now a Dr. Marcus Johnson, one of the youngest and most respected doctors in the country. His name appeared in medical journals, his lectures were broadcast at universities, and his research was reshaping how hospitals around the world treated critical cases. But despite the fame, Marcus never forgot where he came from. He still visited the same hospital halls where his father once mopped floors. He would stop to talk to janitors, nurses, even patients waiting in line. To him, every life mattered, no matter their title, wealth, or background. His philosophy was simple: every life is worth saving. One stormy night, as Marcus was finishing rounds at the hospital, the emergency ward erupted in chaos. Ambulances screeched into the bay, paramedics rushed in shouting over each other. A massive highway accident had just taken place. Dozens of lives hung in the balance. Marcus didn't hesitate. He threw on his gloves, his mind racing. The emergency room flooded with patients, children crying, adults unconscious, blood staining the white sheets. Panic spread through the staff. "Dr. Johnson, we don't have enough surgeons," a nurse cried. He looked around. Fear filled the faces of young interns. He stepped forward, his voice firm. "Then tonight, we all become surgeons. Follow my lead." For the next 8 hours, Marcus moved like lightning, stabilizing patients, guiding teams, making decisions that determined life and death. His commands were sharp, his focus unshakable. At one point, an intern froze, trembling over a patient's open wound. Marcus placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "You can do this. Look at me. Trust yourself." The boy nodded, regained his courage, and saved the patient. By dawn, dozens of lives had been rescued. The hospital staff looked at Marcus with awe. To them, he was not just a doctor, he was a leader, a mentor, a light in the darkest hour. But Marcus's journey was not without trials. With recognition came scrutiny. Some in the medical establishment still resented him, the boy who had risen from nothing, the janitor's son who dared to stand among elites. At conferences, whispers followed him. Is he really that brilliant, or just lucky? He's young. He'll make mistakes. Then we'll see his fall. Marcus ignored the noise, but deep down, he felt the weight of expectation. One mistake could erase everything he had built. And then came the test that would define him once again. Months later, the billionaire who once owed him his life called him personally. His voice was urgent. "Marcus, I need you. My daughter, she's ill. No doctor can figure out what's wrong. Please, you're the only one I trust." Marcus agreed without hesitation. When he arrived, he found the young woman pale and frail, her condition deteriorating rapidly. Teams of specialists had already tried everything, but no cure had been found. Marcus sat by her bedside, studying every symptom, every test result, every small detail others had overlooked. He barely slept, working day and night, filling notebooks just as he had done as a boy. Finally, after weeks of relentless study, he discovered the truth. A rare condition so uncommon that even the best doctors had missed it. The treatment was risky, but it was her only chance. The billionaire, desperate but trusting, agreed. In the operating room, tension was thick. The billionaire stood outside the glass window, just as Marcus once had. Nurses whispered prayers, doctors waited for instructions. Marcus steadied his breath. "This is for her," he whispered to himself.
One afternoon, Marcus returned to the hospital unannounced. He found a young boy sitting alone in the waiting area, nervously flipping through a tattered notebook. The boy's eyes were wide with the same hunger Marcus once had, the hunger to learn, to understand, to dream. Marcus sat beside him. "What are you studying?" The boy hesitated, then showed him pages filled with messy sketches of the human heart. Marcus smiled. "You remind me of myself." The boy looked up in shock. "You're Dr. Johnson. Everyone talks about you. They say you're a genius." Marcus chuckled softly. "I'm no genius. I just never stopped asking questions, and neither should you." He handed the boy his card. "When you're ready for medical school, call me. I'll make sure you have everything you need." The boy's eyes filled with tears. In that moment, Marcus saw his own reflection. A cycle continuing, a new story beginning. As the years passed, Marcus's father grew older. His once strong hands trembled now, his steps slower. One evening, Marcus wheeled him through the halls of the Johnson Center for Medical Innovation. "Dad," Marcus said softly, "everything here, it exists because of you." His father shook his head. "No, son, it exists because of you." Marcus smiled, his eyes moist. "I only made it here because you never stopped believing in me. Every night you worked, every word you spoke, every sacrifice you made. This legacy, it's yours as much as it's mine." His father's eyes welled with tears. He reached for Marcus's hand. "You've done what I never could. You've changed the world, and I couldn't be prouder." In his later years, Marcus wrote books, not just about medicine, but about hope, perseverance, and the power of believing in voices often unheard. His writings inspired millions. Schools were named after him. Scholarships carried his legacy forward. And through it all, he remained humble. Whenever journalists asked him how he wanted to be remembered, he always gave the same answer. Not as a doctor, not as a genius, not even as a hero. Remember me as a boy who once asked, "Can I help?" and who never stopped asking. The final chapter of his life came quietly, not in fanfare, but in peace. Surrounded by his family, students, and patients, Marcus closed his eyes one last time. His father's mop, polished and framed, hung on the wall above his bed, a reminder of where it all began. News of his passing spread across the globe. Cities held vigils, hospitals lit candles, children in faraway villages prayed in gratitude. World leaders paid tribute. But perhaps the greatest tribute came from the countless doctors, nurses, and dreamers who carried his torch forward. Each one whispered the same words Marcus had once lived by. Every life is worth saving. Years later, a statue was erected outside Westbridge Medical University. It depicted Marcus holding a notebook in one hand and a stethoscope in the other. Beneath it were engraved the words, "Dr. Marcus Johnson. He saw what nobody else could." Students passed it daily, inspired by his journey. Young dreamers touched the base of the statue, whispering promises to follow in his footsteps. And so the janitor's son, once invisible, became eternal. 15 of the world's best doctors failed to save a billionaire's life, until a janitor's son noticed what nobody else could. That single moment changed everything. That his gift was real.
The procedure lasted hours. Every moment was a battle. Machines beeped, alarms blared, and sweat dripped from his forehead. But Marcus never wavered. With precision and calm, he completed the operation. When the final monitor beeped steady, relief spread across the room. She would live. Tears streamed down the billionaire's face as he embraced Marcus afterward. "You've saved my family twice. How do I ever repay you?" Marcus smiled softly. "By giving others the same chance you gave me." Word spread once again. Marcus was now not just a brilliant doctor, but a savior in the eyes of many. Invitations poured in from around the world to lead hospitals, to teach at universities, to head research institutes. But Marcus chose differently. He returned to his community, to the neighborhoods where children still believed that dreams were out of reach. He opened free clinics, trained young doctors, and mentored students who came from backgrounds just like his own. One day, during a lecture, a young girl raised her hand. "Dr. Johnson, how did you know you were smart enough to be a doctor?" Marcus paused, remembering the boy he once was, the boy who doubted himself, who stood behind glass windows, invisible. He smiled. "I didn't know. I just know I couldn't stay silent when it mattered." Genius isn't about knowing everything. It's about seeing what others don't, and having the courage to act on it. The room erupted in applause. Years later, Marcus stood at a new podium, not as a student, not as a doctor in training, but as a leader of medicine. He had built an institute that bore his father's name, the Johnson Center for Medical Innovation. His father, now retired, walked proudly through its halls, smiling at every plaque, every photograph, and every student who stopped to thank him. The janitor's mop had been replaced by something far greater, a legacy. And Marcus Johnson, once dismissed as a charity case, once doubted by the world, now stood as living proof that brilliance, determination, and compassion could change not just one life, but millions.